Go.
We're in the synagogue at Capernaum. Of all the places I've been to in the land of Israel, this is probably my favorite. And the reason is that we know that this is a place from Scripture in John chapter 6 from where Jesus taught. The synagogue you see behind us is a 2nd century synagogue. It's made of white limestone. But if you notice right below the white limestone, and I'll just step right over here, is more dark black volcanic rock. That's the site of the 1st century synagogue. And the limestone synagogue in the 2nd century was built upon that in the same frame, in the same shape. You notice that it's a synagogue because around the sides, right behind me, are the seats of the synagogue. And the bema, the seat of judgment, or the seat from which the rabbi would speak from. And in this case, in John chapter 6, it's Jesus. He would speak from there in authority. And here in John chapter 6, Jesus gave the bread of life discourse. That occurs here in John chapter 6, right after the feeding of the 5,000, which took place on the opposite side of the Sea of Galilee. That night after the feeding of the 5,000, Jesus went across to the other side. His disciples followed in the boat, but a great storm came and they found Jesus walking on the water. They were very frightened. They forgot the great miracle that Jesus did. And Jesus comes here to Capernaum. He heals a woman with the hemorrhage and the issue of blood on the way here, and then comes to this synagogue, this very location, and gives the bread of life discourse. And he says to the people, "I am the bread of life. He who believes in me will never be hungry, and he who comes to me will never be thirsty." He was telling the people that although he had done something impressive in giving them physical food, that the real purpose for his coming into this world was to provide himself as spiritual food for us. In other words, by receiving him, by eating his flesh and drinking his blood, it didn't mean anything physical. It meant that we would receive him into ourselves just in the same way that we receive food, that we would depend on Jesus. He was sharing with them the gospel. This marks the high point of the great Galilean ministry. The feeding of the 5,000 is the only miracle that is given to us and shared with us in all 4 Gospels, and it marks the peak of his popular ministry, the peak of his popularity, because we read in John chapter 6, verse 66, that after this teaching, and when he shared with the Jews that he was the message and that they must believe in him, it says in that verse, many of the Jews no longer followed him. Many of his disciples walked away. My question as we think about this passage of Scripture is that we don't follow Jesus for popular opinion. We don't follow Jesus because of the benefits that it gives us in life. Jesus promises to bless us. The Christian life is a blessing. But we follow him because he offers us the bread of life. We follow him because he is the way, the truth, and the life. We follow him because he came into this world to seek and to save that which is lost. And so right here, right in this place, 2,000 years ago, Jesus gave this message to believe in him. And that's our encouragement today and our offer of salvation to trust in Jesus Christ.